All right, let's unpack this. You've brought us some really interesting material from FinCrime Intelligence looking at this big challenge for banks and fintechs, false positives. Our mission here for this deep dive is really to cut through the jargon and understand what these false positives are in financial crime detection, why they're such a headache, and what's actually being done about them. We want to give you that clear picture from the sources you shared.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. The sheer volume of transactions, customer checks happening constantly. Institutions rely on automated systems to catch the bad stuff, right? Money laundering, fraud.
Right.
But sometimes those systems flag things that are completely legitimate. Innocent transactions, normal customer behavior. That mistake, that incorrect flag, that's the false positive we're digging into.
Okay. So based on your sources, we'll look at first what they are, where they happen most. Then, the big question, why do these systems get it wrong? Then we'll get into the impact, which sounds significant. And finally, how are people fighting back? What are the strategies? And what do the regulators think? Ready to dive in with us?
Let's do it.
Okay, so straight from the source material. The core definition seems pretty straightforward. A false positive is an incorrect alert.
That's it. It's when a fraud or an AML, anti-money laundering system flags something, but it's made a mistake. It's incorrectly identifying a legitimate transaction or customer as suspicious or fraudulent.
Okay.
Right? And these systems are often set up to be, well, overly cautious. Better safe than sorry is the thinking, so they don't miss a real crime.
But that caution means mistakes.
Exactly. It generates a huge number of alerts that are just noise. And every single one needs a person, an analyst, to look into it, investigate, and basically say, nope, this is fine.
That sounds time-consuming, and the article points out some specific areas where this happens a lot.
It does. There are definite hotspots. One really common one is name screening. That's checking customer names against watch lists. Sanctions lists, lists of PEPs, politically exposed persons.
Right. I can see how that would go wrong. Names aren't always unique, spelling variations.
Precisely. Common names, typos, different cultural naming conventions. The system tries fuzzy matching to find similarities, and boom, lots of flags for people who aren't actually on the list.
Okay, so name screening. What else?
Transaction monitoring is another big one. Systems often have rules like flag any transaction over X amount.
Seems logical.
It does, but the source gives a good example. Imagine a customer who regularly makes large transfers. A simple rule flags it every time, even though it's normal for them. The system lacks that context.
Oh, okay. It doesn't know their history.
Right. And the third area mentioned is customer onboarding. When you sign up for a new account, risk scoring models are used. Sometimes these models just misjudge someone. They might flag a perfectly low-risk person, triggering extra checks and alerts right from the get-go.
So these systems, trying to catch criminals, end up creating a lot of, static, flagging innocent stuff because they're maybe too broad or don't have the full picture.
That's a good way to put it. They generate a lot of noise.
All right, so we know we're names, transactions, new customers. But why? Why are these sophisticated systems making these kinds of mistakes so often? What are the root causes, according to the source?
Yeah, the source digs into this. A fundamental reason is just having overly broad rules or thresholds. The net is cast too wide, basically. The sensitivity is too high.
Just too many fish, including the wrong ones.
Exactly. And another huge factor, really critical, is poor data quality.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Pretty much. If the system's working with misspelled names, outdated addresses, missing information, it just can't make accurate judgments. It leads directly to bad flags.
Okay, so data quality is key.
Definitely. Then there's a lack of contextual awareness. We touched on this with transactions. Systems often look at things in isolation. They don't necessarily see the bigger picture of customer history or behavior.
Right, is this normal for this person question.
Precisely. The source also points to ambiguous matching logic, especially with that fuzzy matching and name screening. It's designed to catch variations, but that inherent fuzziness creates ambiguity and flags things that need a human to sort out.
So it's trying to be clever, but maybe too clever sometimes.
Or maybe not clever enough yet. And lastly, inflexible models. Crime patterns, they call them typologies, change all the time. Customer behavior changes too. If the system's models don't learn or adapt, they start flagging new, legitimate behavior patterns as suspicious just because they look different from the old normal.
So it's like the system's rules are out of date.
Yeah, or just not smart enough to understand context or handle messy data or adapt quickly. It's like using a very blunt instrument when you need a scalpel.
Okay, so we get the what and the why,
Yeah.
but let's talk impact. What does this constant stream of wrong alerts actually do to the institutions
Yeah.
and to the people working there? What's the real-world consequence?
Oh, the impact is huge, and the source lays it out pretty clearly. The
Yeah.
most obvious one is just diverting resources. You have skilled compliance analysts.
People trained to find actual crime.
Exactly. And they end up spending massive amounts of their time just chasing down and closing these false alarms, things that pose zero risk. It's a huge productivity killer.
I can imagine.
And that leads to something really serious the source calls alert fatigue.
Alert fatigue.
Yeah, think about it. If you're wading through hundreds, maybe thousands of false alerts every day, you just get numb to it, desensitized.
And you might miss the real one.
That's the danger.
Right.
It increases the risk that a genuinely suspicious alert gets overlooked or dismissed too quickly because it's buried in all the noise. It's counterintuitive, but too many alerts can actually weaken your defenses.
Wow. Okay, that's a really important point.
And for customers, it means delays, slower onboarding, maybe their legitimate transactions get held up for review. It leads to reduced customer satisfaction.
Yeah, nobody likes their account frozen for no reason.
Absolutely not. For the banks themselves, it's higher operational costs, not just the tech, but the huge amount of human hours spent investigating all these alerts.
Right, the people cost.
And it gums up the works from a regulatory perspective, creating regulatory inefficiencies. Institutions have strict deadlines to file SARS suspicious activity reports, or STRs in some places.
When they find something genuinely bad.
Yes. But if the analysts are drowning in false positives, they might not get to the real SARS in time, potentially missing those critical deadlines.
That sounds serious.
It is. And the source emphasizes, for places with huge volumes, big retail banks, busy fintechs managing this isn't just tweaking things. It's called critical to maintaining speed, accuracy, and regulatory alignment. It's core to their business.
Okay, that paints a pretty challenging picture. A huge drain, risk of missing real crime, regulatory issues. So what's being done? How are organizations trying to, push back against this flood?
Well, they're not just sitting back, thankfully. The source outlines several key strategies. It's about reducing the false alarms without lowering their guard too much.
Right. Finding that balance.
Exactly. So one core thing is refining rules and thresholds, moving away from those blunt, overly broad rules and using historical data, using analysis of how criminals are actually operating now to make the rules smarter, more targeted, more risk-based.
Makes sense. Sharpening the tools.
Yep. And a massive focus is on enhancing data quality and customer segmentation. Clean, accurate, up-to-date data is fundamental.
Fix the garbage in problem.
Right. And segmenting customers, understanding different groups behave differently allows for more tailored monitoring. You don't apply the same rules to a student as you do to a large corporation.
Okay. What else?
Technology is playing a big role. Incorporating machine learning and behavioral analytics, this is a big step beyond static rules.
How does that help?
Well, ML models can find complex patterns in huge data sets that rules might miss. Behavioral analytics builds a profile of what's normal for each customer. So the system gets better at spotting things that are genuinely weird, not just different. It adds that crucial context.
Context again. That seems key.
It really is. They're also using negative news screening and other external data.
Right.
So if an alert pops up, they can quickly check other sources. Does this person have adverse media coverage? Does other data support or refute the flag? Helps clear things faster.
Like cross-referencing.
Exactly. And finally, it's not a one-off fix. It requires periodic model tuning and scenario testing, constantly checking. Is the system working? Do we need to adjust the models? Let's test it against known fraud types. It's continuous improvement.
Right, ongoing tweaking. The article also mentioned something about tiered alert systems. That sounds practical.
Yeah, that's more about workflow efficiency. Instead of treating every alert the same, you prioritize. High-risk alerts get immediate human eyes. Lower-risk ones might go into a slower queue or even be handled by automated checks first. It focuses the human effort where it's most needed.
Okay, so lots of internal effort to tune the systems and manage the workflow. But what about the regulators? They must have a view on this. It's not just an internal efficiency problem, is it?
Absolutely not. Regulators are watching this very closely. The source makes it clear they get that zero false positives isn't realistic. You need some caution.
Right.
But they do expect institutions to prove their systems are properly calibrated, genuinely risk-based in their approach, and regularly reviewed and updated.
So you need to show you're actively managing it.
Yes. In fact, a persistently high false positive rate can be a major red flag for regulators. The source says it could signal systemic flaws or a lack of strategic oversight. Basically, it suggests you don't have a good handle on your compliance systems.
Ouch.
So, institutions need solid documentation. They have to show how they manage alerts, why they made certain tuning decisions, and how they measure if their systems are actually effective.
Proof that you're doing the work.
Exactly. And regulators also stress the need for clear escalation paths for worrying alerts, good audit trails who did what when, and importantly, independent checks to validate that the whole AML and sanctions program is working right.
So the pressure is definitely on from the regulatory side too. Get it wrong, and it's not just wasted effort.
No, get it wrong, and you risk missing actual financial crime, facing fines or enforcement actions from regulators, and taking a serious hit to your reputation. The stakes are very high.
Okay, pulling this all together then. It really sounds like this isn't about eliminating false positives completely. That seems impossible, maybe even undesirable. It's more about wrestling them down to a manageable level.
That's precisely the core message from the source. The goal isn't zero, it's finding that strike a balance. You need enough vigilance, enough sensitivity to catch the real threats. But it has to be balanced with operational effectiveness, so you're not drowning in noise. A certain level of over-alerting is expected, even necessary, to avoid missing things.
So the alerts need to be, as the source says, meaningful insights. They need to actually point towards potential risk most of the time.
Exactly, so that the analysts, the human experts, can focus their energy on the cases that genuinely warrant investigation, finding and stopping the real financial crime.
And the source concludes this is becoming even more critical now.
Yes, it frames it as a strategic imperative. As crime gets more complex, as data volumes explode, being able to manage false positives effectively isn't just a technical tweak. It's fundamental to a financial institution's entire strategy for fighting financial crime.
Wow, okay. Well, that certainly does unpack the issue. We've gone from the basic definition, looked at where and why they happen, the very real pain they cause operationally and regulatorily, and the complex strategies being used to manage them.
It really is a constant balancing act, fine-tuning these incredibly complex systems to be sensitive enough but not too sensitive. It's a crucial, often unseen, part of protecting the financial system.
Well, hopefully this deep dive has given you, our listener, a much clearer insight into this specific, very real challenge within financial crime prevention.
And maybe it leaves you with this thought to consider, drawing from the source. With crime changing so fast and data always growing, is finding that right balance ever a finished job? Or is it more like a constant chase, always needing adjustment just to keep up?
Something to definitely think about next time you hear about banks, fintechs, and how they fight fraud. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.